All right, fantastic. Thank you, Carmelia. So good morning, everybody. My name for the last time is Alex Rodenberry. I'm the Complete and Green Streets Planner here at the Mid-America Regional Council. And I wanna welcome you for the very final time to the Pathways to Vision Zero Summit. We have been very excited to be hosting this summit in an effort to encourage our community to reduce traffic, crash fatalities, and serious injuries down to zero. So I'll go ahead and for the final time, I'm just going to say final a whole bunch in this introduction. For the final time, we were going to encourage you to turn your cameras on so that our speakers feel like they're talking to actual individuals versus blank screen that they're actually talking to. But please keep your mics off. We really appreciate that. So we'll invite you throughout the entire presentation to go ahead and leave comments and questions in the chat box. And for all those questions and occasionally those chats, we'll make sure to read those to the presenters at the Q&A time at the end. All right. So I just briefly want to take a moment to recognize our summit planning partners that are represented here on this slide. A huge thank you to all of those organizations that help make this series possible. So for the, before we get started this morning, and we've been kind of promoting this for the last couple of weeks, it's also posted on the website, our Vision Zero website, but we are putting together a free workshop that's following this event. This workshop is to take the lessons that you've learned from the summit and to start working towards a practical application of those lessons for your own communities. So there are limited spots, but if you think your community would be interested, we'd be looking at a group of folks from your community, if you're interested and are selected for this, to join us, to showing that commitment to Vision Zero. We'll be doing those. This is going to be a two-part workshop on December the 4th and December the 8th. So I think I have the link saved, but it may not happen. So nope, I don't, or I do. And Amanda put it in there for me because she is a terrific person. So you can click on that link to go to the application for the workshop, and I encourage you to do so. So let me introduce our speakers for today. In this, our final session, Emerging Trends in Transportation Safety. So we've got, actually, I didn't ask Howard how to pronounce his last name before we started, so I hope I don't butcher this terribly. Howard Lubliner, PhD and an engineer. He's the engineering manager for Burns and McDonnell. Howard leads the Burns and McDonnell transportation team in the Kansas City region. In this role, he develops staff at all levels, from new graduates to senior professionals, and is responsible for implementing the technical quality program. He brings extensive experience in planning, design, construction, observation, asset management, and maintenance of a wide range of transportation projects, from high-volume urban freeways to low-volume rural roads. Prior to joining the firm, Howard served the Kansas Department of Transportation for 16 years in a variety of roles, including roadway design, construction oversight, and highway safety manual implementation. And Brian Shields, our city traffic engineer from the City of Overland Park. Brian is currently the city traffic engineer for Overland Park, Kansas. He has worked on both coasts as a traffic engineer with national transportation consulting firms, and grew up in the Midwest, where he also worked for the Indiana DOT. He is a graduate of Purdue University and obtained his MBA from the San Diego State University. So without further ado, I want to welcome our two speakers. I'll go ahead and turn off my presentation and be quiet. Howard, it's you.
Perfect. Alex, thanks for the introduction there, and hopefully you can see my slides. A little thumbs up, you're good there? All right, awesome. So as Alex said, my name is Howard Lubliner. I'm privileged to co-present today with Brian Shields. So talking about emerging trends in transportation safety. And today we actually have a bit of a potpourri for everybody of some different things that are going on within the transportation field, that we thought were particularly interesting and worth bringing to your guys' attention here at the conference today. So one of the things that attending these conferences affirms for me is the incredible importance to make safety personal, right? So as much as we can go out with our statistics and our efforts to change behavior, to move culture really, requires some of that personal resonance. So on the left here, you see a picture of my super awesome 84 Camaro that I owned when I was in college. It was good. And on the right, though, that is actually a picture of Interstate 80 through this Iowa. That is my representation. So it was my junior year of college, and I lived in Chicago at the time. There was a massive blizzard through all of the central states, but I needed to make it back to the University of Kansas because I was going on a ski trip with my buddies. So I decided to get in my 84 Camaro and drive through a blizzard down the interstates of Iowa and to get back for my ski trip. Can anyone guess what 84 Camaro plus blizzard equals? And yes, you don't have to put it in the chat box. I think we all know where this is going. I ended up actually doing a 720 on the interstate. So the car spun 2 full times in a circle, and I ended up in the median in a snowdrift. So I bring up this example first to let everybody know that humans are part of our transportation system. And unfortunately, humans do not always make great decisions. It turns out the parts of our brain that processes risk are very small, and the parts of our brain that process social stimulus are very large. And so this is why when I'm debating between attending my ski trip and my potential driving safety, I make a poor decision. This is why when your phone makes that little bing and you're like, oh, somebody must want to talk to me and I need to text them while I'm driving. That is the mechanism of your brain that is not wired for us to make good decisions. And so this is why I find it incredibly important as an engineer myself that we design and build infrastructure that is forgiving of bad decisions. So that allows us to try to make facilities that limit the amount of poor decisions that drivers can make. And then in my case here on Interstate 80, that if I do make a poor decision and I'm out there and I put myself in a bad situation, that does not result in a fatality or major injury, that we have recoverable facilities, we have crash barriers that crumple instead of crumpling our cars and ourselves. And so a lot of what we'll be talking today about is what we can do to provide safer infrastructure for our drivers. Really quick, just some of my credentials, and Alex touched on a bunch of them. I did get my PhD from the University of Kansas in crash prediction modeling. I never text and drive, so I actually have gotten in the process or in the practice of putting my cell phone in the back seat. So I can't even like short circuit my brain, like don't even let me have that interaction. So put it away. I've served with the National Cooperative Highway Research Panel on the oversight of the second edition of the Highway Safety Manual. So we'll talk about that a good amount here today. I always Uber home from the bar. So do not drive home. Driving drunk, obviously, very terrible activity. So always find a way to get home from a friend or from Uber. And I did teach graduate highway safety at the University of Kansas for a while. So that was a fun class. And got to do that in my free time before I had kids. So let's talk about some new trends in crash modeling. So what are we doing to figure out how we can better account quantitatively for the safety benefit that our facilities are bringing? I like to start out presentations like this, like why do we care? What is the point of evolving and improving our understanding of the interaction of our transportation facilities? And we saw a graph similar to this in the last presentation. So what we've seen nationwide, and this just happens to be statistics from Missouri, is that, well, as an industry, we made tremendous improvements from the 1950s into the 1990s and 2000s in terms of number of fatalities and fatal accident rates. The truth is, over the last certainly 15 years, we've pretty much flatlined, right? We have stopped making significant improvements in the either number of fatalities that we have or in the fatal rates that we have in either Kansas, Missouri, or the United States as a whole. So what does that mean? So when faced with a challenge like this, I look to the internet and I look to the great thinkers of our time, and they, what can they tell us about what we need to do? And Albert Einstein said, I found this quote on the internet, that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them, right? So we need to find ways to evolve our thinking and our understanding of our transportation facilities and how they interact safely, so that we can break that curve and really find the next thoughtful inflections about how we're going to make safety improvements. Now, I will add an asterisk to that, and that I also found this quote from Albert Einstein on the internet. So you never know what you'll find on the internet. So just be thoughtful there. For those of you who are not familiar with the sort of idea of quantitative safety, I find this graph to be the most helpful. So the blue line represents sort of historically what we have understood about highway safety when we were evaluating infrastructure. And that was basically just a binary good or bad, right? If we met the design standards, things were good and safe. If we failed to meet the design standards, things were bad and unsafe. And there wasn't, this is basically our standards-based design. It carried us, through most of the development of the interstate and many of our infrastructure today. And it was very useful to create, it would not have been helpful if we had 9-foot wide lanes in Missouri and 14-foot wide lanes in Kansas. So developing these standards really, moved the needle for us and brought safe improvements for a long time. But we've reached some diminishing returns. And so now what we have in the area of quantitative safety is something more like the red line, which we understand is how things work on a continuum, right? So a 2-foot shoulder is better than no foot shoulder. A 6-foot shoulder is better than a 4-foot shoulder. And then after that, we sort of get diminishing returns, right? So 10 foot's better than 6 foot, but not quite as good. And so now we have algorithms, equations, means to actually quantify these improvements, and in the hope that by getting away from this binary standards-based decision-making and getting into more of a continuum quantitative-based decision-making, it'll allow us to make the optimum decision. And then I bring up some examples here about why quantitative decision-making is important. And something that I picked this project because I assumed it would be near and dear to my friends at Mark's heart. This is the Buck O'Neill Bridge. This is a project that I had the opportunity to work on and we studied. And so I would point out that as part of this, we did a quantitative safety analysis, a benefit cost analysis of how much safety benefit will we get for the investment of the project. And this specific analysis went into our application for a build grant. And the results of this analysis, the fact that we were able to quantitatively demonstrate to the federal government that this project would bring, very effective safety benefit, was one of the reasons why the project was selected for federal funding for a build grant. And so these are the ways that a lot of decisions are made within our organizations quantitatively. And if we're only able to bring safety in terms of qualitative measures, this is good, this is better than it was before. It doesn't empower the decision makers to make the most efficient decisions. So this is just one example of where numbers help to promote safer decision making. One that I don't have a graphic for, but I had the opportunity, I was working on a roundabout project with a city I won't name. And as the engineering team, we brought the roundabout as the safest treatment for this specific intersection, and got pushback from the city council, and very much this traditional, like, people don't like roundabouts, they scare people. And so the engineering team went back and we created these graphs and we said, look, it's safer than the signalized intersection that would otherwise go in here. And we still got some pushback. And then we brought them some statistics that showed, and I'm quoting this number off the top of my head, so maybe off a little bit, but that the roundabout would reduce the number of fatal and serious injury crashes at the intersection by 60%. And that number really swayed the decisions that city council made, right? That nobody on that city council in their right decision making could look at a number like that and vote for the thing that was going to create 60% more fatal and injury crashes. And so, again, just another example of why quantifying safety is important and helps us to make better decisions. So some of what I'm going to focus on today is the Highway Safety Manual in its second edition. So the first Highway Safety Manual came out in 2010, and we are working on the second edition, and there will be a lot of expanded content in the Highway Safety Manual. So the HSM1 was a groundbreaking document in terms of what it brought to the engineering community for quantitative safety analysis. It brought us a lot of terms like crash modification factor and crash prediction models that were not widely used, even 10 years ago in the industry, and has brought that to us. But in doing so, we've learned that there are as many questions as we were able to answer with the Highway Safety Manual's first edition. There were a lot more left unanswered. And so some areas where the new content we're hopeful will be able to modify and enhance some practices. So first and foremost, and I assume something that will be found well in this group, is dramatic improvement in terms of the quantification of bike and pedestrian safety within the manual. Historically, in part just due to available safety data and other reasons, this was not a major part of the first Highway Safety Manual, and it is a second in this part, big part of this second edition. And I will say it's actually one of the things that's held up the release of the second edition is that we're waiting for the completion of some key research. And it was the decision of the panel that the bike and pedestrian piece is so important that we will hold up the production of the manual to be able to wait for this research to be completed and incorporated. And so this will allow us to look at comparative facilities. So, what is the safety benefit of putting a bike lane on the street and narrowing the lanes as opposed to keeping your existing cross section on the roads, looking at parallel facilities and on-street facilities and all those sort of things, and then also looking at pedestrian safety as well. So it is challenged by the thing that we are often faced with in bike and pedestrian analysis, and that our data with the volumes of bicyclists and pedestrians is limited as compared to what we have for roads, but we found some good ways to work around that, and the manual will present communities with the opportunity to make these analyses. If they are blessed to have good bike and ped data, then they can use that, but there's also some means to do that if you don't have that data available. So a big change. Next, we've added the capacity to look at what we call systemic safety improvements. So this is, historically, our safety treatments have been a bit of a whack-a-mole, right? So we'd have a high crash location come up here and we'd whack it and we'd find a solution, and then that would be, and then the next year there'd be a different location that popped up and we'd whack that and try to address that. And that worked for a while because a lot of the high crash locations were very reoccurring and prevalent. But as we've begun to address those, we've looked for some of these systemic safety improvements. So these are ways that we have known, often low cost safety improvements. So I think about things like rumble strips. And how can we apply those systemically across the whole system to improve the whole system's safety, even if we can't justify that improvement at a specific location due to the data at that location. So some guidance there about how we can do systemic safety calibration or systemic safety application. This is getting a little bit nerdy for those folks who are familiar with the models, but calibration of the models. So one of the things that we found is that safety performance, crash numbers specifically, vary a tremendous amount from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And every state will tell you it's because the drivers in the neighboring state are worse than the drivers in their state, right? That is the, everyone will tell you. I live in Douglas County. People here like, oh, those crazy Johnson County drivers. Wherever you live, it's always your neighbors who are the ones that are driving crazy. But it is statistically proven that the same models do not work right out of the box for each and every jurisdiction. So if I would leave anybody with a rule of thumb, is that make sure that when you are using these models in the future, that you take the time to calibrate them for your specific jurisdiction. It is so very important, just because the performances do vary so much from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and why that calibration is important. And then one of the things that really took the manual community for a loop, but our evolution in technology, is that Part D of the manual, which governs our crash modification factors. In the first edition of the Highway Safety Manual, we actually published each and every crash modification factor with its value and parameters in the manual. And instead, with this iteration of the manual, we have evolved into the technology generation. And from now, the manual only gives you guidance on how to apply the crash modification factors. And the crash modification factors themselves are now all housed online at the CMF Clearinghouse. So I will put a plug in. CMF Clearinghouse is a great product put out by the FHWA, Federal Highway Administration. And it is a great quick resource if you are trying to do a back of the napkin analysis of how effective your safety treatment will be. Some great resources at that website to help you do that. And the Highway Safety Manual will go into much greater detail about the best practices for ways to apply those CMFs in practice. And then we do have a number of new models for things that, again, we didn't have great data on, we didn't have great research on when we did the first Highway Safety Manual. So have increased our understanding of like high-speed expressways. We've added 5-leg intersections where we only had 4 before. Rural signalized intersections we didn't have. Innovative interchanges, so like a diverging diamond interchange, things like that we didn't have in the original models will now be added in this new one. And again, sort of knowing my audience, I figured pro roundabout group here generally. So we will have roundabout models now in the Highway Safety Manual. Previously, we could give you like a high level understanding of how a roundabout could perform against a signalized intersection in just 10,000 foot terms, like very broad sort of analysis. But now we can really get in and tell you, based on the radius of your roundabout, based on the deflection angles and the different curve approaches that you have, how that roundabout is predicted to perform. So some really great measures that I think will advance our decision making about what is becoming an increasingly prevalent intersection control type in our industry. And then finally, when it comes to urban environments, the models that we have available have increased and improved dramatically. So I would say, I guess, in urban and suburban areas. So before we didn't have one-way streets, now we have all of those. We didn't have 6 or 8 lane, even arterial roadways, and now we have models for those. And then all the various intersections that go along with that. So it was a bit of a hole in the last edition, and one that we've, with recent research, have really looked to clear up. So seems like you guys are all sold. Everyone's very excited, and you're asking me, okay, Howard, I want a Highway Safety Manual too. When's it coming out? Great question. So the Highway Safety Manual will be available in 2021 is our target for publication. Anyone who's been familiar with the publication of federal manuals should know that this is not a breakneck process. So it is a very, very deliberate process. And so our friends at AASHTO, specifically Kelly Hardy here, there's a highwaysafetymanual.org website where you can find information. And to be honest, where I straight pilfered about half to 3/4 of the information I presented to you guys today, I borrowed from my friends at AASHTO. So, and they're happy to share. So great place to contact them if you have information or questions about the release and when that's coming out. And one thing I do like to end these presentations with is a lot of people who have been involved with engineering for a long time get a little bit skittish about liability, right? So the question is, what happens to my liability if I'm not following the standards? If I try to do something that's different? And we have some things, including here from the Chief Counsel of MoDOT, which says, informed those implementing practical design that the courtroom defense was actually stronger when the defendant was shown to have exercised sound engineering judgment rather than just blindly following standards. So I think now that there is a great legal precedent and defense that says we don't just have to do what the standards tell us because those are what the standards are. If we have good engineering rationale, again, supported by some of this quantitative safety analysis, we can do different things and more innovative things to try and improve safety on our roadways. And with that, I will now kick it over to Brian, who's going to talk to you about some traffic signal technologies.
Okay. Thank you, Howard. Let's see if I can pull this up here. Ah, success. All right, thank you. Appreciate being invited here to speak a little bit about some of our technology that we're using for some of our safety aspects in our organization. So I know a lot of people on here are from the Kansas City area, and you already know a little bit about Overland Park. But for anybody that's outside, we are part of the KC metro area, about 200,000 residents in a fairly large area that we have, 75 square miles. A number of years ago, we started with a small traffic management center, one person and a bunch of master controllers in basically the size of a coat closet, it seemed like. We've since graduated to a little bit more state-of-the-art area where we are co-located next to our fire training center to our 911 dispatch center. So we have a really close working relationship with the police department. We have about 100 miles or so of fiber optic cable that runs throughout the city and connects a lot of our city facilities and our traffic signals. And as part of that, we have about 170 intersections that have traffic cameras that we started recording a number of years ago now to be able to use the video for various issues that would come up. When I say 170 locations, some of those are just your standard pan, tilt, and zoom type cameras. We do have some that we've been using more recently that are called quad cameras. So we have 4 fixed cameras that look at an intersection. So we get each direction as opposed to just looking at one direction. And then a number of video detection cameras that we still have in service too. So overall, we have over 300 cameras here in the city. So theme here, Vision Zero. How do we make our streets safer? So I guess the first thing is to have a very good crash database. We are actually in a good position. We get data from the police and have built this database over a couple of decades now so we can go back and look and see what's going on. The one thing you do find when you look at the crash reports is the data accurate? It's one thing for people to be involved in an accident, but a lot of times, if there are witnesses, they don't stick around. They're just like, oh, that was a crash. I got to go to work. So you only get 2 versions of what happened and no cooperation. So it's always good to know the basic facts of what happened. As we all know, facts do matter. And one of the best ways we've found to be able to make that more realistic is to actually record our cameras. So we started recording back in 2008. It was kind of interesting. Some places around the country had been recording for a while. And boy, if you look over at London, I mean, they've got, several thousand cameras throughout their city that they've been recording forever. And, we're just starting to think about it. And we had somebody who was murdered here in the city. And there was actually, they got abducted here and murdered elsewhere. But there was a lot of police requests like, hey, how come we're not recording our cameras so we can track things like this better and at least, bring some closure to the cases a little bit quicker. So that kind of got us into looking at it. One of the things we wanted to do early on, you often hear about, hey, you shouldn't be recording your cameras because Big Brother is watching. We decided to put our cameras on our city website. So you can go there and you can see whatever we're recording is what's being shown on the city website. So there's nothing nefarious going on with what we're trying to do. Our first crash was really during kind of our testing phase. It was caught, I'll say by accident. So we had just kind of started to mess around with it to see what it would take bandwidth wise, how long we should record, things like that. I happened to be riding my bike through an intersection and it's like, oh man, a crash just happened here. So the following Monday when I got in, we looked, I was like, yeah, the camera caught the crash. How about that? And then it was like, well, what do we do with that? So we worked with our police and attorneys and came up with some protocols for saving crashes and how we would get that into the police network and preserve the chain of custody and things like that. And currently we're capturing well over 30% of our crashes today. Started out kind of low, but when you have this many cameras around town, it actually works to your advantage to be able to record different directions from one location. So a lot of things go into how long do we record, is it a day, 2 days, 3, a week, 2 weeks, what? And we kind of started out on the easy end when we first started. I was like, well, let's just record for 2 days and, we should be able to find things, by that time. Of course, after a couple weeks it's like, oh, something happened Friday night and it's now Monday morning. So that video is gone. So then we started recording for 3 days. And then, the first Monday holiday came. I think it was Labor Day. And it was like, oh, yeah, we missed the stuff on Friday because we didn't come to work Monday. We came to work Tuesday. So pretty soon, it just started morphing out a little bit more. And then we're at 4 days. And of course, then every once in a while, you get those 4-day holidays where it's like Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving and Saturday and Sunday. So for a long time, we were doing just a week. And occasionally, you get these snowstorms that happened and the police are just like so overwhelmed with 100 crashes during the day that they say, hey, why don't you just walk it in later on and we'll do it that way. So you sometimes get people walking in a crash, a week later. So right now we're doing 2 weeks recording, and that seems to fit pretty well with what we want to do. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of numbers of crashes that we get. So starting in 2008, that first month in August, we found 24 from the different cameras. And then we took a pause and got with the police and legal folks and said, all right, well, what do we really want to do with all this? And then we started doing it a little bit more full force. Interestingly, you can look over the time down at the bottom, the percent recorded started out, we had about 15% of all the crashes. Now we're up to, over 35%. More interesting thing there, obviously with COVID-19, you can see in 2020, our numbers really dropped off there in April. So number of crashes are way down this year, and obviously the number that we record are way down too. So a little bit of statistics to go along with reality here. And even when things get back to normal, we wish that it would stay at that level. I don't think it's going to happen though. So one of the things I want to do real quick is go through a few videos and show you some different things. First thing I want to do here is show you a video of a truck that's getting ready to turn. And you'll see over here, I'll use my cursor. We have our traffic signal cabinet here on the corner. So in the police report, it says the truck driver stated he was eastbound on 75th Street when a vehicle ran a red light. The driver advised he attempted to avoid the vehicle and struck the traffic control box. So let's see what happens here. You gotta be watching for that red light runner. Yeah, so as you can tell, there was no red light runner in that case. The truck driver had, I guess, what I would call an alternative set of facts for his situation. And, without the camera there, the police probably would have written it up that way. Hey, somebody ran the red light, the truck driver did the best he could. But, in this case, we have a little bit better information and we're able to provide that to the police, and they're able to make an accurate determination on what really happened. Next one, sometimes we get requests because two drivers have different stories on what happened. So in this case, you're going to see eventually a vehicle over here on the left make a turn into this lane, and a vehicle over here on the right make a turn and also kind of get over into their lane. So it should be the next two vehicles that make the turn. So you're always supposed to turn into your closest lane. Obviously, the silver car didn't. And interestingly, in the police report, they said, yeah, this is what happened, and they both took responsibility. And then later on the next day, we got a call from one of the parents and they said, hey, now that's not what my daughter or son is saying what really happened. They said they turned into their lane and the red car turned into their lane. So it was interesting, when we were able to provide that video to them, like, okay, yeah, so that's what really happened. Down here. All right, next one here. This is one that happens at a high school on Antioch Road down by Blue Valley West High School. So afternoon dismissal, a lot of cars going north, a lot of congestion. You'll see that these cars kind of start to stack up here near the arrow board. And pretty soon there's one car that hits, and then another car and another car and another car. And there's another car and one more. And I don't think we're done yet. There might be one more. Let's see if there, yeah, there we go. So it was quite the chain reaction. And, in this case, we gave that to our public information officer in the police department. He put it out through their social media resources and, got picked up by the local news stations. And then, interestingly, that got shared so many times by the kids who were involved and the kids that go to the school that I think it really highlighted to them the very dangerous things that can happen when you're out driving and how easily and quickly things can turn from being just, I'm leaving school to I've been in, an 8 vehicle accident here. Let's see, this is an interesting one. So there's a vehicle driving over here in the parking lot as they're leaving at 95th and Knoll, one of our thoroughfare intersections. So they're going to come up here and they're going to wait to be able to get on. They actually want to make a left turn so they can follow the rest of this traffic that's going south. And as they're waiting, there's some cars coming from the north and a few cars go past, and pretty soon the driver's just going to be like, oh, I think this car is going to pull into the driveway here. I'll go ahead and pull out in front of them. And you end up with a rollover accident and a vehicle facing the wrong way and a driver with injuries. So thing that was interesting about this, I had people calling me that day saying there was an accident here and somebody was driving the wrong way down the street because the car that rolled over ended up backwards, facing south in the northbound lanes. And, I look at the video, I was like, no, that's not what happened. So a lot of times the public gets an idea, they just see maybe a momentary glimpse of what's going on, and they don't really see what the rest of the story was behind it. So they get one idea in their mind of what the reality of the wreck was, but, it wasn't the true reality. Let's see, this one is at one of our intersections, 127th and Knoll. So this vehicle, the white vehicle, is making a left turn. And there's another vehicle over here that wants to make a left turn the other way. And there's a vehicle coming here. So you can see that, that white vehicle right there, if he hadn't pulled out so far, probably would have left enough room to be able to see if there was a car coming. So those types of facts that you can glean from these situations give you a better idea of what really happened during the crash. And is there something that we could do as traffic engineers or safety professionals to make a positive difference? This is one that Alex and I discussed with a group of school kids at UMKC here recently. Oops, let me go. How did that happen? Let's try that again. There we go. So bike lane here along Santa Fe, a bicyclist coming up, light turns green, these cars start to go, that car is waiting a little bit, doesn't have their right turn signal on, and all of a sudden, boom. So, we showed this to the students there at UMKC, and they pointed out a lot of the right things. Hey, the one car didn't start in time. They were probably, it looked like they were looking down maybe at their phone or something in the car. And that's why they were delayed, and then they didn't have their turn signal on. And so they seem to have it pretty well. So let's see, where is that? There we go. So in the police report, I'll just read this real quick. The police wrote, the driver was headed westbound on Santa Fe. So first of all, that's wrong. They're actually going eastbound. And the light turned green and proceeded. Driver turned right to go north. Obviously, that's wrong. They turned right to go south. And as they turned, they struck the bicyclist. Didn't know that the bicyclist was passing on the right. So you can kind of read through here, and so there's a few little mistakes here and there, but at the bottom, it says, in the last paragraph, it says, the driver contributed by not signaling. The bicyclist contributed by improper passing. The bicycle lane does not give the bicyclist any special right to pass traffic while it's moving. So I thought that was interesting. I see some head shaking. So I won't make any further comments on that, but I think there has to be maybe a little bit more thought behind how we look at some of these things. And I know couple of days ago, maybe last week it was, there was a person, Nora and Zawi and Sarah Smith, who were talking about their crashes that they had been involved in, specifically Nora. She was talking about, hey, I was crossing the crosswalk and all of a sudden I got hit. And, it seemed later like the police report was totally different from, what actually happened. So having a video in a case like this, can be very helpful to, make those facts a little bit more known. So this is another one, bicycle related. I pulled out some bicycle and pedestrian related ones for you all, since that seems to be more of a major theme here, trying to keep folks safe that are in the most vulnerable positions. Real quick here, this one, this guy is getting ready to turn right on red. He's got a lot of cars that he's got to sift through here to be able to make that happen. And finally, at some point, he's going to say, hey, there we go. I can go ahead and make my right turn on red. Unfortunately, this kid, 15-year-old kid on the bicycle, is like, hey, I should just be able to go. And, they got into a little bit of a crash there. So there were no citations written in this case. I think the police probably said, the bicyclist obviously had a lot of fault there because he didn't stop and push the button and wait for a walk signal. But I think their thought was, we won't penalize the kid for doing something stupid like that. He's already, damaged his bike and probably gotten into some trouble with his parents too. So this is a montage of bike accidents. Here's the bicyclist over here. Both people are doing the wrong things there. The bicyclist didn't wait, and the car is not supposed to be turning right on red. We have signs, and then they didn't even stick around. Here's one where the bicyclist is doing the right thing. He finally got the signal to cross. Obviously, somebody's not looking to the right to see if anybody's coming. Now, we put all these together in this montage, and then we share it with our police, and then they, oops, there we go, right there. Somebody pulls too far forward and knocks the bicyclist over. Here's one. This is really hard to see, but, the bicyclist was coming up so fast here that the person turning right just had no idea they were coming. Here's another one. Bicyclists not doing what they should be doing, and the car should be looking a little bit more as far as what's coming on from the right. So again, we give this to the police, and like for bike safety month or bike to work week, they put that out on social media just to help people get a better idea of what's going on. We also look for these ones that are red light running. The police really like these, especially when the light's been red, which the light is red here for quite a while. And if you look over here, the light is green for the left turn. So these people will start to go. And that blue car there is going to get blown up. So the police will take those and say, what were you people thinking, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever it is after a crash. So again, we put together kind of a montage for a PSA for the police. Oops, must have skipped over that one. So we kind of skipped over one here, but that's okay. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, these are all red light running crashes.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
Just to be mindful of time, we've I think Howard needs a couple of minutes to finish up his time. We got about 15 minutes left in the presentation.
Yep. You bet.
Although these are terrifying and amazing and a little bit funny at times when people clearly aren't being hurt, but it's still mostly terrifying. But
yeah, not a problem. So
I'll
skip the last one here. It was basically a bunch of crashes that happened. So here's the basic thing. Make sure if you are going to do something like this, it really helps to understand the circumstances, advocate for change, and really use it for social media type things. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point and let Howard have it back.
All right. Thanks, Brian. And then I do think along those same lines of what can we do to learn from unfortunate circumstances. So COVID-19 has brought, as Brian indicated, some really interesting changes to our traffic patterns, and want to take a bit of a time to take some lessons learned and what we can understand from that. Now, I will say the research in me will let you know that low sample size warning, right? So always a bit of a concern if we're taking, just a small set of data. In this case, I had about 6 to 7 months worth of data to pull. And for those sort of participating or viewing these slides later, I did cite the sources of all the different data from Kansas and Missouri that I'll use in the presentation. So really quick, this is a copy of a crash prediction model. And somebody somewhere got their PhD from developing this, and it really goes to show this brilliant theory that as the amount of vehicles on a roadway increases, we generally see that the number of crashes on that same roadway increase. And those are usually proportional. So all of our fatal injury and property damage only, all of our crashes increase, right? Mind blown. Similarly, when traffic decreases, we see that the number of crashes also decreases. However, what we have seen during this last year in 2020 from the state of Missouri is that we know our traffic volumes to be down, as Brian has indicated, but there's a 12% increase in the number of year-over-year fatal crashes in 2020 versus 2019. Very similar statistic from the state of Kansas. We know traffic volumes to be down, and the number of fatal crashes in Kansas this year was up 6% from the 5-year average. And we do, while these are just 2 states, we know this is very consistent with the sort of national trends. So at first, what I wanted to do was take my degree and burn it, because this fundamental principle of linking traffic volume to the number of crashes is fundamental to quantitative safety analysis. And so that was my first thought, but instead I decided to look into it and think about why. So why do we think this has occurred? And so we did some extra digging into the data, and we have found some very interesting trends that I thought would be interesting to share with this group. So first, I'll actually do the second one here first. We've seen an 88% increase in the number of crashes involving pedestrians. So this goes back to sort of a bit of a COVID trope, or at least an anecdotal observation, is that lots of our pedestrian activities have increased during this time, right? So everyone's seeing neighbors they had never seen before. So both recreational pedestrians walking around, also potentially some conjecture, but some folks less interested in taking transit maybe we're walking now, but pedestrian crashes are increasing. And so we know very much that pedestrian crashes are typically high severity crashes, and so that trend certainly can lead to a lot more fatalities. And also we've seen a 33% increase in fatal crashes in rural areas. So this came from Missouri. So you would ask, what does that have to do with traffic fatalities? So interestingly, and this is explained, this is Kansas City Scout data. And you can see through COVID that overall, basically on all of the interstates throughout the Kansas City area, where we keep Kansas City Scout data, traffic was down about 10%. And in the peak hour, traffic was down 7 to almost 20% at times. You can see here in the morning peak, this is the normal average, how much less traffic we had, especially back in April and May. So one of the things we know about quantitative safety analysis is that the performance of our different roadways is not the same. So this comes from a Minnesota Fundamentals Handbook, but it's all true no matter the jurisdiction. In general, our interstates have the lowest fatal crash rates. So per traffic volume, the interstates are generally considered to be our safest roadway facilities. They have the widest shoulders. They often have forgiving medians, or they have barriers separating the traffic. And then you go to like your trunk highways, which are your major highways, and then onto your county roads. And so what we see based on these sort of statistics is, if we have a large decrease, like we said, between 10 and 20% at times decrease in interstate traffic, that's going to decrease our overall number of fatalities on the interstate only a little bit, because again, that is one of our safer facility types. And if we see a proportional increase in traffic on our rural highway system, that's going to lead to a much higher rate of overall traffic fatalities. So what we're seeing during COVID is this redistribution of traffic and getting away from, commuters, folks who generally regularly understand their routes and know where they're going, and on these generally safe facilities, and moving them to some rural facilities that don't have recoverable slopes, that often don't have the same width of shoulder, and then sometimes now involve people who are just getting out and taking vacations, maybe driving on vacation when they would have flown before during COVID. And so that net redistribution of where our traffic is can be one explaining factor of why our overall roadway fatalities is up in 2020. And this is sort of proven out that when we look at a homogeneous single system, like the Kansas Turnpike, for instance, that keeps all of its own statistics, it's operating in much the same way that we would expect it to do, is that traffic was down in 2020 and fatal crashes were down in 2020. So it's not that our equations are broken or that our means of calculating these things was incorrect. It's just that where the traffic has been going and this redistribution is accounting for some of the change. So in addition to some of like the system-wide behavior changes, we have seen some changes in driver behavior in the mix of drivers that we have on our roadway. MoDOT, Missouri cited or gave a statistic that 60% increase in the citations of drivers going 26 or more miles over the speed limit. There's a 13% increase in fatal crashes involving unbuckled drivers, and a 40% increase in crashes where speed is identified as a contributing factor. So if you participated in one of our last presentations, it demonstrated that speed is a tremendous driver of crash outcomes. If people are going faster, it leads to poorer outcomes. If you are going 26 miles over the speed limit, that means you are far in excess of the safe facilities that have been provided for you. And if you do get in a crash, it is likely to be in a fatal or injury crash. And again, with the unbuckled drivers, and again, this is a little bit conjecture here, but we're not using the same driver pool that we had in 2019, right? So now you have people who are on the road who are maybe self-selecting to be out or go to gatherings or do things. And so just in general, their, barometer for what is a safe action may be different than those people who are choosing to stay home and just, disconnect entirely from other activities. And so that correlation to folks who also choose to drive when they're unbuckled may be playing out here in terms of the number of drivers that we see on the road who are driving unbuckled is certainly statistically going up in 2020. And again, some data from Kansas City Scout, a little bit hard to see there. I have it a little bit better here. Overall, the speeds on the interstate are up 4%. And again, peak hour speeds are up as much as 10 to 16%. So when you're talking about a 435, right, the difference between a rear end crash at 75 miles an hour and 50 miles an hour is tremendous in terms of its outcome. And so we are starting to see some of that play out in terms of some of the crash outcomes and why just the changing the amount of cars on the road is not translating to a reduction in overall fatal crashes. And so in summary, we're seeing a lot of different things shift from roadway types. So more traffic on rural highways, less on interstates, a lot more crashes with pedestrians, and then changes in driver behavior. Speed and speed related crashes are increasing, and crashes involving unrestrained drivers also increasing. And so what can we do now? So for those of us who look at safety data on a daily basis, 2020 will present a lot of interesting conundrums for how we consider this data in the future. Certainly 2020 data, as we look at it in the future, should be provided with context. It's incredibly important that we understand the context of our driver experience in 2020 and how that is going to influence that data point in our future graphs. This experience really personifies the reason why we need crash rate analysis when assessing safety performance. So if you just looked at 435 crashes outside of its traffic volume in 2020, you would say it was a banner year for 435 in its reduction of crashes. But that doesn't speak to all the different reductions in the traffic volume and our need to account for that. Also, I'm sure most everyone on this call is banging this drum, but this data just increases our understanding of the need to reinforce safe driver behavior and the need to protect our most vulnerable users, right? So as we get more pedestrians out on the road, if we have more people who are driving and are unbuckled, that is going to lead to more fatalities. And this just statistically reaffirms things we've already known. And then I do think this exercise was just a good example of why, and just to build on what Brian did in his last presentation, why digging into the root cause of these crashes is so very important to understanding true safety performance in our systems. And anyone could have just looked at that front few statistics and saw that traffic was down and fatalities were up, and just made any number of different assumptions. But doing that deeper dive is incredibly important to understanding the safer experience and helping us to make better decisions going forward. So with that, sort of wraps the content that we have for our presentation today. And so I think Brian or I are available to answer any questions that folks may have.
All right. Well, thank you very much for both of your presentations. I thought they were both really interesting. I certainly learned a lot today myself, and also the joy of watching terrifying videos is always thrilling. So I appreciate that. So we've got several questions and we're running out of time. So I'll do my best to give each of you at least one. Brian, have you had any success with educational outreach to law enforcement to help them understand the importance and value of their police reports to improve safety? The follow-up was, we use their data a lot in safety analysis, but as you just pointed out, sometimes the police reports are less helpful in actually determining the cause of traffic injuries and deaths.
Yeah, we've actually been pretty successful in the past with, looking over the reports and saying, hey, you've got the directions wrong here, or, maybe this didn't happen quite the way they thought, or sometimes they don't even realize what the traffic signal can do. They see one direction, but they don't see, that, oh, hey, when it goes red northbound, it also goes red southbound at the same time. So we're able to provide a little bit more clarification on those things. And sometimes it's more of a matter of, well, can we get them to change their mind about, bicycles shouldn't be passing people on the right. So that's a little harder sell because they have different things, I guess, the way they look at it. But those are things we need to still sort through and try to make a difference.
Awesome, thanks. Howard, got a real quick one for you. We had a question about, so is FHWA document, this is regarding your update to your safety plan, does FHWA documentation on systematic screening, is that going to be incorporated into the second version?
Yes, so they plan, the document will have a full approach to how to address systemic safety improvements. So both in terms of screening and countermeasure selection, but then application. So that will all be within that chapter.
Okay, a little bit of a longer question for you, realizing we're almost out of time, so hopefully this one isn't too complicated. Have you been able to see any of these fatal crash data related to equity? I'll just actually leave it at the question.
No, that's fine. I will say that not yet. One of the things that really, unfortunately, sort of plague us in the safety industry is the lag in terms of our ability to get data. And so I was actually impressed that either Kansas or Missouri had data this quickly already. And so right now we're talking pretty limited sample sizes, like really only the fatal crashes. So haven't had a chance to dig in much beyond those sort of broad level statistics that they provided to us. But I do think that, as we turn the new year and those crash reports are processed, it will give us an opportunity to look at a lot of different trends, including the equity one in which you mentioned.
Okay, well, I'm afraid I have a few more I might pose to you all later and see if we can put those on there. Most of them are questions that occurred to me. I think we've tried to hit all the ones that occurred to attendees today. If I could just take a really quick moment here at the end of our final session, saying I managed to work final in one last time. So, and I just wanted to say, you know, that this concludes the Pathways to Vision Zero Summit. We wanted to give a big shout out to all of our amazing speakers and panelists that we have had since the beginning. And a special thanks to all of you, the attendees, for your interest and passion for safety in your communities as well. Just please remember that the recordings to all the presentations are or will be available at the website that you have access to. So keep an eye on those as we move forward, you know, as the days progress. As well as we do have some surveys on the various sessions. So it would be really helpful for us, Amanda and I and Carmelia, to know your thoughts on the sessions as well. Also, please expect to see a final survey sent out to all the registrants as well. So keep an eye open for that. And again, we really just would like to know your thoughts on how you thought this went in this odd year of 2020. So on behalf of the Destination Safe and the Mid-America Regional Council, I just want to say thank you.